I've spent years replaying that moment in my head, the moment when I chose comfort over courage. It was easier to look away, to pretend everything was fine. I was part of a group of friends who had influence, money, and power. We were celebrated everywhere we went. And the thing about power is, it corrupts. I watched them trample over people's dreams and aspirations as if it was their right. At first, I thought I could just blend in, avoid the ugliness, and keep my hands clean. But I knew. Deep down, I knew that silence was complicity. Yet I stayed, because standing up to them would have meant losing everything. I remember one particular incident so vividly. It was a charity event, a grand spectacle hosted by our group. The facade of philanthropy was nothing more than a shield for their greed. They exploited the goodwill of people, making promises of change and hope, but everything was twisted for personal gain. I saw the betrayal in the eyes of the victims, their dreams crushed. But I didn't say a word. I couldn't risk being the outcast, the one who spoke against the so-called heroes of the society. My cowardice chained me to their poisonous ideals, but every day my conscience grew heavier. I tried to convince myself that my silence wasn't harmful, that I was just an observer, not a participant. But then came the day when I was asked to sign a document that would ruin someone's career. I hesitated, my pen hovering over the paper, but the pressure, the subtle threats of isolation, made me fold. I signed away someone's future to protect my own. That was the day I realized that I wasn't just a bystander, I was part of the very corruption I despised. And from that moment, everything started to fall apart.
The guilt was unbearable. I started to avoid my friends, making excuses to keep away from their schemes. But the truth was, I was still too afraid to confront them, too afraid to admit my own wrongdoing. They noticed my absence, but their smiles remained as sharp as ever. They'd welcome me back whenever I showed up, their words dripping with the subtle threat that I was one of them, whether I liked it or not. It felt like being caught in a web that grew tighter with every passing day. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted them during one of their gatherings. My voice shook as I poured out everything I'd kept bottled up for years. I called them out on their lies, their manipulation, but all I got was laughter and dismissive comments. To them, I was nothing more than a fool trying to play hero. Their scornful words cut deep, but it was their indifference that truly shattered me. After the confrontation, I was left standing alone. My so-called friends had made it clear that I was no longer welcome in their circle. The silence was deafening, but there was a strange sense of relief mixed with the pain. I had finally spoken out. I had acknowledged my own wrongdoings, admitted that I had been part of the harm. But the truth was that words weren't enough. Apologies weren't enough. I had to make things right, no matter how impossible it seemed. And for the first time, I felt a genuine desire to change. I spent weeks trying to find the people I had wronged. It wasn't easy. Many doors were slammed in my face, and I was met with anger and distrust. But I kept trying. I needed to apologize, not for the sake of forgiveness, but because it was the only way I could live with myself. Some people accepted my apology, others didn't. But the point wasn't their forgiveness. It was about finally taking responsibility for my actions and facing the consequences, even if it meant being hated. Apologizing was just the beginning. I wanted to make a real difference, to undo some of the damage I had helped cause. I started volunteering, supporting those whose lives had been ruined by the very people I once called friends. I used my resources to fund projects that could actually help rather than exploit. And slowly, I began to rebuild my own sense of integrity. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. It felt right. Months later, I received an invitation from one of my former friends. It was an attempt to lure me back into their world, to test if I had truly changed. I walked into that room knowing that I had to face them once and for all. This time, I didn't hesitate. I told them the truth about everything they had done and how I had been complicit. And when their anger and ridicule poured over me, I stood firm. Because this time, I wasn't afraid of losing them. I had already found something far more valuable, my own integrity. Walking away from that room felt like shedding the last remnants of a poisoned past. I knew that my journey was far from over, but for the first time I felt free. Free from the guilt, the shame, the need for approval. I had made terrible mistakes, but I was trying to be better, even if the world never forgave me. And perhaps, in some quiet corner of my heart, I had finally forgiven myself.